Hi there, this is French Vinyl Addict coming up on the third video on my channel. Last week I was asking you guys, my big vinyl community on YouTube, to reply that simple question, which genre you guys should be or would be interested in. Two things. Out of the 20 viewers, okay, 16 because my sister watched the video like 4 times. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you very much to the first people who subscribed to my channel. And I know some of you are prog rock fan, prog nerd, progressive music freak. So in today's video I will be presenting to you 6 copies of my vinyl collection I was picking up earlier in the prog rock genre. And before I forget, today's video has been sponsored by no one. Let's go prog rock! So, at the very first place of the list comes this album, King Crimson in the Court of Crimson King. In my opinion, the first album you should be introduced to if you ever decide to take a journey into progressive music. This album didn't have a huge success by the time it was released. It was many years after people like Genesis or Yes were mentioning this album as a massive source of inspiration, that people did rediscover this album and gave it the credit it deserved. Musically, it's rich of extended and structured sections, massive use of mellotron, and of course Greg Lake's voice. So a must-have album, and it really paved the way of the upcoming generation. Second one on the list would be Rush 2112. Rush is not a typical prog rock band. I think they had their first hit in the US with Working Man on the first album. When you listen to that song, it sounds more like a Led Zeppelin song, so it wasn't really prog rock at the beginning. But a couple of years and 3 albums later, when they were about to enter the studio, things were different. Their last album didn't have much success, and so they were about to do something risky like they have never done before. So this is really a progressive rock concept album, which combines art and literature, and the result is a quality piece of work combining acoustic parts, sonically futuristic sections, heavy guitar parts as well, not forgetting depth of the songs, thanks to Neil Peart's talent as a writer. So it's one of my favorite albums, 2112, from the band Rush, released in 1976. So yeah, in a way, Rush went back to its prog origins when they were recording 2112, because as a kids they were listening to bands like Genesis or Yes, which is a perfect transition because the next album on my list is that one, Yes, Close to the Edge. By the time this album was made, Yes was already successful on both sides of the Atlantic. Steve Howe, the guitarist, had joined the band on the Yes album, Rick Wakeman on Fragile album, which was released only 8 months before Close to the Edge, because the band just wanted to evolve musically and to explore new technologies available. And Tony Kaye, the guy who used to play keyboard in the band, was a little bit conservative and reluctant to trade his Hammond organ for some new technology. So Rick Wakeman replaced him for Fragile, and they finally made that album, which is a classic masterpiece, and to me a definition of what prog music represented by the early 70s. A genre that had plenty of followers, among young people in Western countries. So a must-have album. And speaking about followers of the genre, um, next album, Machiavel, Mechanical Moonbeams. The Belgian band emerged in the mid-70s, drawing his inspiration from the English group who made that genre prog rock so popular. Um, that's the third album of Machiavel. The second with Mario Guccio on vocals, aka the Belgian Freddie Mercury, and it's one of my favorites. This album managed to create a unique atmosphere, mixing vocal, guitar power, symphonic touches, and great catchy melodies. Um, Rope Dancer is a classic, and After the Crop a masterpiece. So it's not one of the most famous band slash album, but interesting to just give a try. So next, number 4, Genesis, Foxtrot. Um, Genesis' fourth album, and before entering the studio, the band was a little bit more confident because success was secured, or at least their financial situation was okay, and they were about to record a very special album. As I often said, the second was to convince themselves, the third to convince the fan base, and that album to convince the rest of the world. So 70s Genesis, classic period, first era with Peter Gabriel, Steve Hackett and Phil Collins had just joined the band on the previous album, Nursery Crime, and it's a masterpiece. Contains a lot of killer stuffs. Watcher of the Skies, Supper's Ready, my all-time favorite, define what prog music in the 70s was all about. This album combines rhythmic complexities, striking virtuosities, audio depth, and lyrics drew from fairy tales, theme, Greek mythological imagery, a must-have album. And the last one I picked up is that one, Aphrodite's Child 666. It's a double album. It's a real prog album, very experimental, ambitious, with a lot of influences, jazz, world music. Vangelis played on that album. He actually composed the songs on that album. Vangelis, who was to become a world famous film score composer. So, and almost as important as King Crimson, I mean, the way this album inspired many prog rock band in the early 70s. The French band Ange, for instance, they often refers to that album. Really interesting. So a good surprise. Not the main, must know, most popular album in the genre, but yeah, worth a try at least. So this is my selection. Please share me in the comment section below. What do you think? What is your favorite selection of prog rock music? And thanks for stopping by. Stay tuned for the next chapter.